Yeah, Joel's here.
Thank you, Joel. We can hear you.
I was getting a little worried there for a second.
No worries. We're all set.
Perfect.
Kamal, can we plan to go live maybe 5 minutes prior, like we did last night? So people can see that when they come on.
Yes, we are actually live. I went live
Oh,
10
great.
minutes
Thank you,
to
Kamal.
5.
Hey, Nate or Jen, how many folks do we have signed up for today?
Morgan, I have 11 on my sign up sheet right now. It looks like we have 7 logged in so far, so we'll wait for a few more.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Is the timer up for folks? I've got some folks chatting me that they can hear us right now. Are we ready to go live?
No, we're already live streaming. So yes, everyone is able to hear us.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Kamal.
Kamal, if we could begin recording as well, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we're ready to get started. Please display the next slide, and Joel Lynch from the National Park Service will provide an introduction.
Good evening. My name is Joel Lynch, and I work with the National Park Service, and I want to welcome everybody to the second public hearing for the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, portion of this project. We appreciate your interest and are looking forward to your comments on the document produced as a result of the process called the Environmental Assessment, or EA for short. To say the least, this has been a complex process, evaluating the two federal actions of the city's proposed UPAR recreation replacement and boundaries adjustments, as well as the federal highways transportation improvements that result from the city's action related to the Obama Presidential Center. I want to thank and acknowledge my colleagues and representatives who are present with us tonight from the National Park Service, the Federal Highway Administration, the Illinois Department of Transportation, and of course, the city. Each has participated in this process, and the process has benefited from their professionalism, as well as we've worked through to address multiple agency guidance and policy needs while developing this EA, or single document. As part of the NEPA process, we are currently soliciting comments from the environmental assessment. Agencies are focused on substantial comments related to the EA project alternatives, the impact analysis of the federal actions, and the NEPA process itself. I would like to remind everyone the NEPA process is parallel but separate from the National Historic Preservation 106 process. This NEPA meeting process may be initially frustrating to those that might have been involved in that process, in that it is different because the stakeholder meetings, we will not be responding directly to comments, but we will be listening. So this is a venue to provide your comments and thoughts about this project as we listen. It is not meant to be disrespectful. It is just simply a different process. Your comments and input are very important to us, and we thank you for your continued interest in this project and the input we've received to date. All comments are informative and will be reviewed. Substantial comments will be provided during this 30-day process, will be responded to and provided to the public in a report in our final decision document. While the In the presentation, we'll cover this multiple times. I want to provide you with some of the options in which you're invited to provide comments. First, the National Park Service's Planning Environmental Public Comment, or as we refer to the public website. This is our preferred method to get your comments in verbatim into the database itself. And obviously during these webinar sessions, we are recording them and will transcribe and subsequently enter the information in your comments into our Pepsi database. You can also mail your comments to the city's Department of Planning and Development, who will again share them with the National Park Service. And finally, you may provide them in person at an opportunity at the South Shore Cultural Center, where a court reporter will be available to transcribe them in Pepsi. The following presentation will go into details about the document and comment opportunities again and process it. We thank you for attending, and we appreciate the time that you're taking and look forward to your comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. We go to the next slide, please. So this is a summary slide of Joel's narrative. The information is also available on the city's website, including the information on how you can provide your comments. Next slide. My name is Jennifer Hyman, and I will be assisting with the webinar this evening. At this time, guidelines and ground rules for the webinar will be presented. This information was provided to participants in advance of the webinar session. During the public hearing, all attendees will be muted and participant video will be disabled. The chat pod function will also be disabled. Only the host screen will be visible during the webinar. The public hearing includes a viewing of a pre-recorded presentation. Following the presentation, an opportunity for public comments will be afforded to individuals who submitted speaking requests in advance of the webinar session. Next slide. The order of public comment participants was determined by the order they were received. During the opportunity for public comments, the moderator will announce the name of the current speaker, and he or she will be permitted to speak by the moderator. If participating on a computer, a screen prompt will allow the participant to unmute his or her microphone. If participating on the phone, a verbal prompt will ask the participant to press *6 to unmute his or her phone. If viewing the webinar or live stream on a computer and calling in for audio features, please mute your computer while speaking to avoid an echo. Next slide. Each participant is asked to provide his or her name and organization. Participants are then given 2 minutes to provide a comment. The screen will display a visual countdown of time remaining. A buzzer will sound at the end of the 2-minute period, at which a 15-second grace period will be afforded to complete the statement. The moderator will then mute the current speaker and announce the next participant. Each participant may speak only once and cannot donate time to another participant. If needed, participants may supplement or complete verbal comments by submitting on the NPS Pepsi website at https://parkplanning.nps.gov/Chicago Jackson Park. Next slide. Comments will not be responded to as part of the public hearing. All comments provided during the public hearing will be recorded and transcribed for the project record. Substantive comments will be publicly responded to as part of the agency's NEPA determination. Next slide. The public hearing presentation will begin shortly.
The National Park Service, the Federal Highway Administration, the Illinois Department of Transportation, and the City of Chicago welcome you to this public hearing regarding the federal actions in and adjacent to Jackson Park. This presentation is pre-recorded and is available on the project website. It will be presented during each public hearing webinar, followed by an opportunity for public comments. Additional details on how you can provide your comments will be discussed at the end of this presentation. This presentation will cover the items listed here. It will begin with a discussion of the purpose of the public hearing. An overview of the federal process and the agencies involved will follow. The federal authority and purpose and need for each federal agency will be summarized. The project alternatives and the impacts of those alternatives will be presented. A summary of the project compliance with other laws will be provided. The presentation will conclude by discussing the next steps of the process. Following the presentation, an opportunity for public comments will be provided. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide an overview of the environmental assessment, or EA, and federal review, present the alternatives considered, present the preferred alternative described in the EA, describe the next steps of the federal review process, and solicit public comments. An environmental assessment was prepared to determine whether any of the federal actions have the potential to cause significant environmental impacts pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. The significance of an impact considers both the context and intensity of the impact. The following slides will describe the need for the federal review process and provide an introduction to the federal agencies involved in the preparation of the EA. The proposed federal actions are in response to the city's decision to allow for the construction of the privately funded Obama Presidential Center, or OPC, in Jackson Park, and the city's improvements to the roadway network in and around Jackson Park. The decision to site the OPC in Jackson Park, the design of the OPC campus, and the related roadway closures in Jackson Park do not require federal approval or funding. The NPS and the FHWA ensure proposed federal actions meet all federal requirements and environmental laws. The federal review is being conducted jointly by the NPS and the FHWA. As noted previously, the National Park Service administers the UPAR program, and the FHWA administers the Federal Aid Highway program. Each of these will be discussed later in this presentation. The National Park Service is acting as the lead agency for this NEPA review. The National Park Service and the FHWA will make independent determinations relating to their authority, but both will draw from the same information gathered during the NEPA process. The actions by the city will also require authorizations from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. The authorizations arise due to the proposed discharge of fill material into waters of the United States, requiring a permit under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, and due to impacts to the Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration, or GLIFR program. Alterations to the GLIFR project require U.S. ACE permission pursuant to Section 14 of the Rivers and Harbors Act, commonly referred to as Section 408. Federal authorities and purpose and need. The proposed OPC project and proposed roadway improvements would impact lands currently managed consistent with the UPAR program. The UPAR program provided grants to economically hard-pressed communities specifically for the rehabilitation of critically needed recreation areas, facilities, and development of improved recreation programs. The federal government, via the UPAR program, provided 2 grants to Jackson Park in 1980 and 1981. As part of the agreements to receive funds, the city committed to maintaining public recreation uses in the UPAR grant boundary, or Section 1010 boundary. The UPAR grant boundary in Jackson Park depicts the entirety of Jackson Park, excluding the existing roadways and the areas occupied by the Museum of Science and Industry and the La Rabida Children's Hospital. The National Park Service reviews any proposed change within the UPAR grant boundary to something other than public recreation use. Any property improved or developed with UPAR grant funds may not be converted to non-recreation uses without the approval of the National Park Service. The purpose of the NPS action is to determine if the city's planned partial conversions meet the requirements of UPAR. In order to amend the UPAR grant agreement, the requirements stipulate that the conversion must, among other criteria, be in accord with the current local park and recreation recovery action program and assure adequate recreation properties and opportunities of reasonably equivalent usefulness and location are identified. If so, the UPAR agreement may be amended. The need for the NPS action arises from the city's decision to close roadways, authorize the location of the OPC within Jackson Park, and improve the roadway network in and around Jackson Park. The NPS has determined that these city projects would trigger a partial conversion of certain parts of the OPC site and areas of roadway improvements that are currently recreational use to non-recreational uses. The NPS must ensure recreational opportunities of reasonably equivalent usefulness and location are provided to replace the converted areas. The FHWA administers the Federal Aid Highway Program, which makes federal funding available to state departments of transportation and local agencies for roadway projects. In Illinois, all Federal Aid Highway Program funds are administered through the Illinois Department of Transportation, or IDOT, through a stewardship and oversight agreement. The Chicago Department of Transportation, or CDOT, proposes to use federal aid highway funding for roadway construction and bicycle and pedestrian improvements within Jackson Park. The purpose of the FHWA federal action is 1. To address changes in travel patterns resulting from closing roadways in Jackson Park, and 2. To improve bicycle and pedestrian access and circulation. Specifically, the following needs were identified: poor intersection operations and congestion after roadway closures, lack of pedestrian grade separations within Jackson Park, and long pedestrian crossings of heavily traveled multi-lane roadways. The United States Army Corps of Engineers, or USACE, is a cooperating agency as part of this EA. The USACE is not a signatory to this EA. However, the city has requested the USACE grant authorizations pursuant to their federal authority. An authorization under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act is required as a result of proposed discharges of fill material into waters under USACE jurisdiction. The actions that require Section 404 authorizations include the widening of the 59th Street Bridge abutment to accommodate an additional southbound travel lane along Lakeshore Drive, and dewatering a portion of the lagoon under Hayes Drive to complete bridge improvements. The USACE also provided federal funds for ecosystem restoration activities in Jackson Park under Section 506 of the Water Resources Development Act of 2000, which is known as the Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration, or GLIFR program. Certain actions that are part of this EA will impact areas previously restored under the GLIFR project, requiring USACE review under Section 14 of the Rivers and Harbors Act, also known as Section 408. Project alternatives. The following slides describe the alternatives that were analyzed for the federal review process. The no-action alternative includes the existing conditions in Jackson Park, subject to ongoing operation and maintenance. The existing National Park Service UPAR grant boundary is shown here in yellow. Existing roadways remain unchanged. Alternative A is evaluated as a baseline to compare against the action alternatives B and C. To replace recreation opportunities lost by the construction of the OPC, the city has identified a portion of the Midway Plaisance where replacement recreation opportunities will be developed. The NPS action is to determine whether the city's proposed replacement of recreation opportunities lost due to the OPC are adequate, and to modify the UPAR boundary. If the National Park Service approves the partial conversion, the city's proposed roadway closures would be implemented and the OPC would be constructed, and the UPAR agreement and boundaries would be amended to include a portion of the Midway Plaisance with replacement recreational opportunities provided. This condition, as shown in this slide, also represents the FHWA no-build alternative to compare impacts of proposed transportation actions. Alternative C is the same UPAR replacement as Alternative B and adds transportation improvements to mitigate traffic congestion as a result of roadway closures in Jackson Park. This alternative also increases continuity between existing park areas with proposed trails and underpasses for improved pedestrian and bicyclist access and circulation. Under Alternative C, NPS would also evaluate and approve the conversion of UPAR recreation land caused by roadway improvements in exchange for replacement recreation opportunities where existing roads are converted to park space. The FHWA action only occurs if the National Park Service approves the conversion of recreational use by the OPC, the city closes roadways, and the OPC is constructed in Jackson Park. The FHWA evaluates the impacts of transportation improvements as shown here. Under this alternative, more parkland will be taken from recreation use for roadway improvements, resulting in further partial conversion. The National Park Service would evaluate the conversion of UPAR recreation land taken for roadway improvements and will review the adequacy of replacement land and recreational opportunities offered by developing the closed road corridors as parkland. Impacts of alternatives. For the analysis of impacts by the alternatives, environmental resources were identified. In keeping with NEPA guidance, the environmental assessment discussion focuses on key issues. Specifically, issues are retained for detailed study of impacts if they may be substantial, if they are of critical importance for decision-making, if they are expected to have different impacts across alternatives, or if the results of the study are expected to be scientifically contentious. Certain environmental resource topics were dismissed from further analysis as they do not meet the described criteria. The topics dismissed include agricultural resources, special status species, other wildlife and wildlife species, air quality, water resources, highway traffic noise, archaeological resources, and construction noise associated with the OPC. Further details regarding the dismissal of each topic are provided in the EA. The impact topics that were carried forward for further analysis include recreation, traffic congestion, cultural resources, social and economic issues, and the Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration, or GLIFR. The analysis of recreation as an impact topic includes describing the change of the UPAR boundary under each alternative, as well as the change in recreational uses and opportunities that would result from loss due to the OPC. Impacts of Alternative A. Under Alternative A, recreation within Jackson Park and the Midway Plaisance would continue under the current city ownership and management by the Chicago Park District. There would be no change to the UPAR boundary or recreation uses under this alternative. Impacts of Alternative B. The partial conversion of the area around the proposed OPC buildings in Jackson Park would result in lifting the existing UPAR requirements for recreation from a 4.6 acre parcel within the OPC site. UPAR restrictions would then be placed on the 5.2 acre site on the east end of the Midway Plaisance. The OPC site currently includes open space with paths that are used for walking or running, a track that is used for exercise, running, and walking, and an artificial turf field bounded by the track, which is used for playing football and soccer. The site also includes open picnic grove space that can be reserved by applying for a permit, a memorial garden known as the Perennial or Women's Garden, and a portion of the 62nd Street playground. At the OPC site, recreation elements would be reconfigured. Lost UPAR recreational opportunities here include the track and field, the picnic grove, and the open recreation space, including biking and walking trails. The UPAR recreation opportunities lost due to the OPC site, which are the track, picnic grove, and open space, would be replaced. The track would be replaced in a new location in Jackson Park. Several picnicking opportunities would be available across the larger OPC campus. Remaining recreation spaces shown would be relocated within Jackson Park, but are independent of the UPAR conversion. The function of the 62nd Street playground would be relocated and expanded to the immediate northwest of the current location. The Perennial or Women's Garden would be temporarily impacted by construction, but upon completion of the OPC site development, existing features of the Women's Garden will be replaced with a new design of equivalent size and improved accessibility. Opportunities for informal recreation would be created through new landscaped areas made available by the closure of roads on the site. To replace lost UPAR recreational opportunities, the city proposes modifying the east end of the Midway Plaisance to accommodate a combination of play area and open space. The majority of the east end of the Midway Plaisance is an open lawn lined with trees. This area has 2 mixed-use trails and a sidewalk. Within the open space are park benches, trees, an informational kiosk, the Cheney Good Memorial, and a wetland. The open space allows for informal recreation such as pickup games, walking, gathering, or open play. Sidewalks provide opportunities for walking and biking. Within the east end of the Midway Plaisance, the western side of the lawn would be altered with the addition of play area that would include both inclusive play and nature play facilities. New structural features would result in the loss of some open recreational space. However, the city proposes modifications to improve the recreational utility of this area. The sunken grade of the lawn area would be modified to facilitate infiltration and drainage to remove the wetland and to enhance the use of the open field. The proposed flexible open space on the site would accommodate a variety of activities, such as dog walking, picnicking, and holding soccer practice. The city also proposes to reinstall a missing historic walk and restore historic tree patterns on the site with the goal of rehabilitating historic spatial organization to a historically open character with corner plantings. There will be no alterations to the configuration of existing roadways or walking paths. Impacts of Alternative C. In addition to the recreation impacts of Alternative B, the analysis of Alternative C evaluates the incremental impacts to recreation changes as a result of the transportation improvements. The planned roadway changes would result in lost park space where roads would be widened or improved, and new recreational space where roads are closed and converted to park space. The areas of Jackson Park that are currently parkland within the UPAR boundary, but that would become roadways or sidewalks, generally consist of sidewalks, walkways, open space, or landscaping that serves as buffer zones for roadways and/or areas for informal recreation. The planned roadway widening and improvements would result in lost open park spaces used for informal recreation, as well as some sidewalks and pathways used for walking, jogging, and biking. These spaces are linear, narrow, and mainly serve as landscape buffer space between roadways and more functional recreation areas nearby. The conversion of these areas to transportation use would not prevent park users from continuing to use the adjacent open areas of the park for recreation. This slide summarizes the change in UPAR boundary acreages as a result of each alternative. Alternative B results in a net gain of 0.6 acres of UPAR land, and Alternative C results in a net gain of 6.4 acres of additional UPAR land. For the analysis of traffic congestion, travel patterns, traffic volumes, traffic operations, and parking supply were studied. Mobility at intersections is measured by calculating the average delay per vehicle and relating it to level of service benchmarks. Level of service letter designations A through F are correlated to quantitative measures based on the average seconds of delay per vehicle experienced at an intersection. A level of service A represents the best conditions and level of service F the worst. Alternative A considers the existing roadway network within Jackson Park and projects traffic volumes to the year 2040. Existing travel patterns and travel times are anticipated to remain largely the same as existing conditions. Traffic growth over this time is anticipated to increase approximately 2.4%, concentrated on arterial roadways. Most intersections continue to operate satisfactorily. However, some intersections experience a degradation in level of service due to the growth in traffic volumes. As no changes to the roadway network occur under this alternative, there are no impacts to parking under Alternative A. Alternative B considers a scenario where the OPC is constructed and the roadway closures are in place. Due to the closure of Cornell Drive, travel patterns and traffic volumes that remain within the study area are diverted to surrounding roadways, primarily Stony Island Avenue to the west and Lakeshore Drive to the east. Traffic patterns shift to the remaining roadway network during the morning and evening peak travel periods. As a result of the traffic diversions, the remaining roadway network experiences substantial congestion and delays. 13 intersections operate at unacceptable levels of service. Due to the roadway closures, 128 on-street parking spaces are lost. Additional off-street parking proposed as part of the OPC development is provided to accommodate anticipated parking demand from visitors to the center and its employees. Under Alternative C, the FHWA may provide funding for roadway improvements to address congestion caused by the roadway closures. These improvements are concentrated along Stony Island Avenue, Lakeshore Drive, and Hayes Drive. Traffic volumes and travel patterns are dispersed among the improved roadways more evenly without overburdening one particular roadway. Alternative C would improve traffic congestion and travel times along all of the routes compared to Alternative B. Traffic operations and delays are comparable or improved compared to existing conditions. The roadway improvements in Alternative C result in an additional net loss of 21 on-street parking spaces. This impact topic focuses on the analysis of impacts on cultural resources under NEPA. An analysis under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, or NHPA, was conducted concurrently with but separately from the EA. This map shows the affected area of the project. The NEPA analysis's affected area for the EA is the same as the Area of Potential Effects, or APE, and was determined in consultation with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Officer. Impacts of Alternative A. No direct or indirect impacts on cultural resources would occur under Alternative A. As a result, no impacts to the characteristics of the historic properties that qualify them for inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places, or NRHP, would occur. Impacts of Alternative B. Proposed UPAR replacement recreational improvements would result in impacts to the Midway Plaisance. The designed character of the sunken lawn would remain intact, and historic features would be restored, including a north-south path and historic vegetation patterns. The new playground would be designed to be compatible with the existing character of the Midway Plaisance. The NHPA assessment of effects process concluded that the effects on the Midway Plaisance would not be adverse. Reconfiguring the women's garden and relocating the track and field, along with removing roads and adding new pathways, would alter historic circulation patterns. Historic viewsheds would be altered by the OPC buildings. Designed topography and viewsheds would be removed for the OPC site development. Though the assessment of effects concluded that there would be adverse effects, the historic properties would retain enough historic integrity to continue to qualify for NRHP listing. Mitigation is under development through a Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, as part of the Section 106 process. Impacts of Alternative C. Alternative C would have additional direct impacts due to roadway improvements. Some contributing features would no longer remain in their historic locations. Specifically, the Hayes Drive-Richards Drive intersection would be moved. The historic triangular design of the intersection and its design emphasis on the Statue of the Republic would be removed. The designed character of Marquette Drive and Richards Drive would be altered by changes to the design and location of contributing historic features. Material features would be lost as a result of project implementation due to the removal of historic roadways. These alterations would diminish the evident historic workmanship of Olmsted's design by altering the spatial organization of Jackson Park, and the historic property's feeling and aesthetic would be diminished. Though the assessment of effects concluded that there would be adverse effects, the historic properties would retain enough historic integrity to continue to qualify for NRHP listing. Mitigation is under development through an MOA as part of the Section 106 process. For the analysis of social and economic issues, the project study area includes portions of the neighborhoods of South Shore, Woodlawn, and Hyde Park. These neighborhoods are highly developed and include residential, commercial, recreational, transportation, and public and private institutional land uses. Population in the three neighborhoods in the project study area totals over 100,500 residents. Nearly half of the residents live in South Shore. Woodlawn and Hyde Park share the remaining number of residents with approximately 25,200 and 26,800 residents respectively. Population values for each neighborhood were established by combining data from individual census tracts within each neighborhood boundary. The labor force participation rates, which include persons in the labor force divided by population 16 years and older, in each of the neighborhoods in the project study area, fall below those of the City of Chicago and the State of Illinois. Unemployment rates for the South Shore and Woodlawn neighborhoods for the 2013 to 2017 period were considerably higher than the City of Chicago and Illinois, while that of Hyde Park was below. Since no federal actions would occur under Alternative A, there would be no direct or indirect social or economic impacts. Alternative B would include temporary impacts to the community, such as an increase in short-term employment and public amenity improvements. Alternative C would include additional short-term employment opportunities from road improvement construction. This slide summarizes the overall social and economic impacts of the alternatives. There would be no impacts from Alternative A because no federal action would be taken. Under both Alternative B and Alternative C, construction will lead to an increase in short-term employment. In the state of Illinois, over 6,000 short-term jobs are anticipated during the construction and startup phases of the OPC site development, with an additional 2,700 long-term jobs during the operation phase of the OPC facilities. Alternative C would generate an additional 200 construction-related jobs for construction of roadway improvements. The Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration Project, or GLIFR, aims to create or enhance nearly 147 acres of native habitat within Jackson Park and along the Lake Michigan shoreline. The project includes 24 acres of new natural areas and the installation of over 600,000 native plants that will increase the biological diversity of Jackson Park and provide critical habitat and beautiful scenery for Jackson Park visitors. In addition, to improve access and circulation throughout Jackson Park, the project includes the installation of overlooks along the water's edge, new pathways, and the reconstruction of existing pathways on the wooded island. The areas included as part of the GLIFR project are shown on this slide. Alternative A represents the current conditions in Jackson Park. There is no change to GLIFR areas under Alternative A. Under Alternative B, permanent impacts will result from the construction of a new lift station by the Chicago Park District. Temporary fencing along the east side of Cornell Drive is proposed as part of this work and would result in temporary impacts. The Obama Foundation proposes to construct accessible pathway connections from the OPC site to the GLIFR pathways and replace the existing crushed stone screening covered paths with concrete, resulting in temporary impacts to the GLIFR areas. A total of 78 square feet of permanent impacts and 0.23 acres of temporary impacts result from Alternative B. Alternative C impacts are in addition to those observed in Alternative B. Under Alternative C, the widening of southbound Lakeshore Drive to the west would have additional permanent and temporary impacts to the restored GLIFR areas from grading and utility work. The proposed pedestrian underpasses near the intersections of Lakeshore Drive and Hayes Drive, as well as Cornell Drive and Hayes Drive, would also result in additional permanent and temporary impacts. An additional 1.32 acres of permanent impacts and 1.47 acres of temporary impacts result from implementing Alternative C. All impacts to GLIFR areas would be restored or replaced within Jackson Park. Areas impacted temporarily by construction would be restored in place using the GLIFR planting palette as a guide. Permanently impacted GLIFR areas would also be replaced on the east side of the Jackson Park Inner Harbor to the south of Hayes Drive, providing a net gain of 1.11 acres compared to the existing restoration area. Compliance with other laws. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, or NHPA, requires federal agencies to consider the effects on historic properties of projects they carry out, assist, fund, permit, license, or approve. If a federal or federally assisted project has the potential to affect historic properties, a Section 106 review is required. Additionally, Section 106 gives the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, interested parties, and the public the chance to weigh in on these matters before a final decision is made. Compliance with Section 106 is being conducted separately from, but concurrently with, this NEPA process. Section 4F of the U.S. Department of Transportation Act of 1966, known as Section 4F, considers uses of park and recreation lands, wildlife and waterfowl refuges, and historic sites during transportation project development. Historic sites are defined as prehistoric and historic districts, sites, buildings, structures, or objects listed in or eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. The law only applies to agencies within the U.S. Department of Transportation and is implemented by the FHWA and the Federal Transit Administration. A total of 41 properties are protected by Section 4F within the project area. Of these properties, 4 of the properties could not be avoided by the transportation project. Jackson Park and Midway Plaisance are considered as 2 separate recreation properties. As they are jointly listed on the National Register, the Jackson Park Historic Landscape District and Midway Plaisance is considered as one historic property. The Jackson Park Historic Landscape District and Midway Plaisance is a contributing feature of the Chicago Park Boulevard System Historic District. Thus, a use within Jackson Park equates to a use of the Chicago Park Boulevard System Historic District. The total use of Section 4F properties by the transportation project is 28.7 acres. Detailed descriptions of Section 4F properties and uses by the transportation project are documented in the draft Section 4F evaluation, which is available on the city's website. On April 22, 2020, the draft Section 4F evaluation was released to the officials with jurisdiction, or OWJs, and federal agencies with encumbrances on Section 4F land for a comment period that concluded on June 8, 2020. The draft Section 4F evaluation was also made available on the city's website for public review. FHWA will consider the comments received and complete the final Section 4F evaluation. The final Section 4F evaluation will be completed prior to, or concurrent with, the conclusion of FHWA's NEPA process. CDOT has requested a jurisdictional transfer of roadways from IDOT in response to the city's proposed roadway closures and resulting improvements to the roadway network. The following roadways will be transferred from IDOT to CDOT jurisdiction: 57th Drive from 57th Street to Lakeshore Drive, Cornell Drive from 67th Street to 57th Street, Stony Island Avenue from 69th Street to 65th Place, and Hyde Park Boulevard from 57th Street to 55th Street. Coordination of the jurisdictional transfer agreement is ongoing. Coordination is also ongoing between CDOT and the Chicago Park District regarding the vacation and dedication of public way in Jackson Park to accommodate the city's proposed increase in park space and roadway improvements to offset the roadway closures in Jackson Park. Next steps. This slide summarizes the next steps in the NEPA process. The EA was released to the public for review on September 28, 2020, marking the beginning of a 30-day public review period. The public review comment period will end on October 30, 2020. Afterward, the federal agencies and the city will analyze the public comments received and provide responses to substantive comments. These will be addressed in a public comment analysis report, which will append the federal agency's NEPA determination. A substantive comment does one or more of the following: questions with reasonable basis the accuracy of information presented in the EA, questions with reasonable basis the adequacy of the environmental analysis, presents reasonable alternatives other than those presented in the EA, and/or causes changes or revisions in the proposal. The NEPA process will continue as the agencies either make a determination of a finding of no significant impact, or FONSI, or decide to proceed with an environmental impact statement. As mentioned in the previous slide, the official comment period for the environmental assessment began on September 28, 2020, and will conclude on October 30, 2020. There are a variety of methods through which comments may be provided. The preferred method of providing comments is online via the NPS Planning, Environment, and Public Comment website or Pepsi website at https://parkplanning.nps.gov/Chicago-Jackson Park. The environmental assessment is available on this site for public viewing. You may also mail your comments to the Department of Planning and Development at the address listed on this slide. Considering the current state of public health safety and out of an abundance of caution, it is recommended that comments be submitted online, during a webinar, or by mail if possible. For those without access to the internet and for those unable to provide comments using these methods, an appointment to speak with a court reporter in person may be scheduled. A court reporter will be present for collecting comments at the South Shore Cultural Center on October 15th between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Social distancing and safety precautions consistent with city and state regulations will be enforced. Public comments will also be collected during each of the public hearing webinars for individuals who submitted speaking requests. The opportunity for public comments will follow this presentation. The preferred method of providing comments is online via the NPS Pepsi website. All comments received are treated equally, regardless of the method through which they are submitted. Duplicate comments by the same individual will be disregarded. This concludes the presentation. The National Park Service, the Federal Highway Administration, the Illinois Department of Transportation, and the City of Chicago thank you for your time and input regarding this project. At this time, during each of the public hearing webinars, the opportunity for public comments will begin.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the opportunity for providing public comments. As a reminder, when it is your turn to speak, the moderator will permit you to unmute your microphone. If participating on a computer, a screen prompt will allow you to unmute your microphone. If participating on the phone, a verbal prompt will ask you to press *6 to unmute your phone. If viewing the webinar or live stream on a computer and calling in for audio features, please mute your computer while speaking to avoid an echo. Our first speaker is Aaron Adams. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you like me to begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Adams. I'm president of the Southside Neighbors for Hope, a grassroots organization that was formed to support our communities and our parks. Our members include individuals from the Hyde Park, Woodlawn, and South Shore neighborhoods. We have focused our attention on the siting of the OPC in Jackson Park, throwing our support behind this gift to our South Side and the many benefits it brings to our people and our park. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about our support for the environmental assessment and its conclusions. The report was rigorous, thorough, and definitely took its time to be completed. We applaud those who worked so tirelessly to generate this assessment, and while we were anxious to get to this point, we are very happy with its conclusions. The report was filled with impressively detailed analyses regarding the impacts that the OPC will have on Jackson Park and on the surrounding communities. The majority of these impacts were positive, like thousands of much needed jobs for our communities and increased acreage and accessibility of Jackson Park for its users. Our organization is not alone in its enthusiastic support for the OPC in Jackson Park. Numerous people spoke yesterday and will speak today on similar themes that we discuss: jobs, hope, open, safe, accessible parkland, better and safer traffic flow, safe and inspiring places for our children to play and learn about the Obamas and the 8 years when sanity ruled our nation. We have a letter of support on our website signed by 579 individuals that similarly support the center in Jackson Park. This is almost 600 people from the neighborhoods of Hyde Park, South Shore, and Woodlawn that have signed their names to this letter. Together, our voices are saying, we want it here and we want it now. For those who have opposed these plans, they do not hear these voices. They also ignore the voices of the leaders of the communities that will directly benefit from the OPC, those that represent South Shore and Woodlawn. These opponents have the time, the money, and most importantly, the privilege to throw as much sand into the gears of this process to delay, delay, delay. We are so excited for the groundbreaking for the OPC. Please let us move on without further delay.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Ivaneska Thompson. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I have been so fortunate to even be embraced by a global organization as innovative and powerful as the Obama Foundation. I've had the pleasure of doing some community work with the org as well as meeting like-minded individuals. My name is Evaneska Thompson. I am the founder and CEO for Babes Only, a female empowerment organization focused on uplifting and healing our communities. I am a DJ, activist, and organizer who has been partnering with local orgs across the city to feed people, to celebrate Blackness, and to provide essential items like PPE kits and hand sanitizer. I've had the opportunity to work alongside the Obama Foundation and have benefited from their input. I'm by a CTA. But the Obama Foundation inspired the creation of a nonprofit organization, Powers for Good, co-founded by myself and 3 other community leaders. We are fairly new, but have focused on the South Side thus far. There's so much hope and promise in this area. People just need an outlet. And I believe the Obama Center is just that. Whenever I ask Southside residents what they feel is needed to improve not only their lives, but also the lives of their children, the simple answer is support. They need to see and feel as though they are valued. This is why I believe the Obama Center is exactly what's needed. Imagine the possibilities. I feel it will not only bring hope to the people, but can potentially change the world. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Jenna Ketchum. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening. My name is Jenna Ketchum and I serve as the Executive Director for Urban Alliance Chicago. I'm speaking on behalf of our organization in support of the Obama Presidential Center. We believe it will improve Jackson Park and the surrounding communities. Urban Alliance shares the Obama Foundation's commitment to ensuring that young people have the tools needed to create change in their lives and communities. And that's why we partnered with the foundation to launch the Obama Youth Jobs Corps, or OYJC, to bring workforce readiness training and early, meaningful work experiences to high school students on Chicago's South Side. The foundation has been an active and enthusiastic partner, fully dedicated to advocating for Chicago's youth and bringing increased economic opportunity to some of the most underserved communities in our city. And when the Presidential Center opens, the foundation will employ OYJC interns from the community directly in the space. We are encouraged by the commitment the foundation has already shown to uplifting the Chicago community. To date, we've already provided paid workforce training opportunities and paid internships to hundreds of Chicago students together over the past several years. And this is just the start. Once the center is built, we expect to serve even more young people. The OPC will be a permanent physical symbol and essential communal space in Jackson Park, dedicated to empowering our next generation of young leaders right here in our beloved Chicago. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Russell Pike. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
I have to promote Mr. Russell Pike because he's using an older version of Zoom. Is it okay to bring him as panelist?
Yes, we can do that. Russell, can you please unmute your microphone?
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Russell Pike. I am the president of the Jackson Park Highlands Association. Our community respects historic landmark because our neighborhood is a landmark district community. I've been in this community for 37 years, and and the majority of our residents highly support and are looking forward to the construction of the Obama Presidential Center. We've anticipated this for some time now. It's been over 2 years since, almost 3 years now, since we first started conversations. And so therefore, we're looking forward to this opportunity to really come to full fruition. It is our belief that the OPC will represent a beacon of hope, inspiration, economic development for the Jackson Park Highlands, South Shore, and the South Side of Chicago communities and citizens of Chicago. We also believe that it will portray an extremely positive statement to the residents of our various communities as well. This project will stimulate significant economic growth, which is long overdue for the South Side of Chicago. In addition, Jackson Park, which has been neglected over the past years, will receive the attention it is entitled to. Furthermore, it offers a chance to revitalize the surrounding communities and create learning and employment opportunities for our young people. Based on the numerous positive attributes that the Obama Presidential Center will provide, it is the belief of our residents that this project will not only benefit our neighborhood, but the entire city of Chicago. The proposed parkland that will be utilized for OPC is insignificant when compared to all of the positive gains that will arise from this venture. On behalf of the residents of the Jackson Park Highlands community and the Jackson Park Highlands Association Board of Directors, please accept our support in accepting the Obama Presidential Center in Jackson Park. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Donna Hampton-Smith. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Donna Hampton-Smith, and I'm the president of the Washington Park Chamber of Commerce and a 30-year resident of the Washington Park community. Frederick Law Olmsted, architect of Jackson Park, in a letter sent to his friend Frederick Kingsbury in June of 1846 wrote, and I quote, "I want to make myself useful in the world to make others happy, to help advance the conditions of society," end quote. What does changing the conditions of society mean for Southside residents, businesses, and the city of Chicago today when the OPC is built? It means, according to the Economic Impact Report, the center would generate $339 million for Southside businesses during construction and $177 million annually after that. In Cook County as a whole, the center could generate directly and indirectly close to 5,000 jobs and $296 million in additional income during construction, and more than 2,500 jobs and $104 million annually after that. Our business community, and for those who live on the south and west sides, have raised their children in these communities, definitely know the value of our community. Many of us have weathered the storm through the good and the bad. So now we want to see the fruit of our labor. We want to see our children grow up and thrive in communities full of commerce and economic development. We believe that the OCP will help advance the conditions of our society, just as Frederick Law Olmsted wished for, and would make Southside residents happy. We believe that the OPC will allow the Washington Park Chamber of Commerce to fulfill its mission by creating and sustaining economic opportunities in the Washington Park community that improves the quality of life for all its residents, businesses, and institutions through advocacy, initiatives and partnerships for community and economic development. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Dory McWhorter. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Thank you. I'm Dory McWhorter, CEO of the YWCA Metropolitan Chicago, and I'm proud that we have served the Chicagoland area for over 140 years, including over 50 years in the neighborhoods surrounding Jackson Park, and we currently serve over 22,000 people on the south side of Chicago. One of the many things that I love about Chicago is that we know how to create a win-win. For example, the Chicago mixed popcorn is a combination of caramel popcorn and cheese popcorn, so you don't have to choose between sweet or salty. You can have both, and it's delicious. This reminds me of the Obama Presidential Center. First, it's likely that we may get Chicago popcorn somewhere, but more importantly, the approach to developing the center is focused on creating a win-win. Although the conversation we hear about the center is either economic development or nature preservation, we hear either focus on local residents or attract tourists. We hear either create jobs for people or support migration of birds. None of these things are mutually exclusive, and the Obama Presidential Center plans to make all of these possibilities a win-win, and will use the 19 acres of Jackson Park, which is only a small portion of the over 500 acres of the park, to create thousands of jobs and economic opportunities. It will ensure access to nature and promote enrichment of some of Chicago's most disinvested neighborhoods through resident engagement and tourism. In short, the future of the Obama Presidential Center can be determined by seemingly disparate views. However, let us focus on how the center can absolutely create a win-win for all the stakeholders. And I personally look forward to one day eating Chicago mixed popcorn on the beautiful Great Lawn of the Obama Presidential Center. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Tatiana Solis. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tatiana Solis, and I'm a young person from Pilsen who understands the positive impact of having a cultural institution in their backyard. As an activist, a community organizer, and a student, I want to emphasize how transparent and community-driven the process this has been. I have had the opportunity to benefit from the Obama Foundation Community Leadership Corps, an Obama Foundation intern, and an organizer with Chicago Votes, and thankful for Chicago because the Obama Foundation has chosen Chicago to be the place where they call home. I have seen a fraction of the OPC process, but what I do know is by bringing the OPC to the South Side, we will not only see jobs and economic mobility, but an opportunity for young people to get involved at the local level and to learn how to create change. I am among the many people in Chicago that has already reaped the benefits of the OPC being built in Jackson Park. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Antonio Davis. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Antonio Davis. I'm founder and executive director of Paving the Way Project. We are a violence prevention and intervention program out in Washington Park. Our program definitely supports this center coming to Jackson Park. I believe that the youth deserve this center. I believe that the community will benefit off it. It will bring economic development to the community. It'll be a beacon of hope for the youth that so many don't have a place to, a positive place to go. So we definitely support this center coming.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Kemda Stroud. Please follow the instructions for unmuting your microphone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kemda Stroud. I'm the executive director and founder of the nonprofit org Thankful for Chicago. We mainly service the West Side. That's our home base, but Obama Presidential Center will have an impact throughout the entire city. So let me tell you a little bit about why I think that it's time for us to get it started. So basically, my family's from the Jackson Park, Avalon Park area. I grew up with going to Jackson Park with my dad, with my dog. I grew up dancing at Mayfair Academy. I grew up eating on Stony Island. So all these streets that you guys are naming like this, that's literally my childhood. So also taking a step back, I guess, and moving a little bit further forward in my life, I grew up in the U Media space, and I know that the OPC will be a Chicago Public Library. I grew up in that time in the space with U Media under Brother Mike Hawkins, and came up with people like Saba, like Chance the Rapper. And when we were all in high school in that green room with literally the opportunity to make music and do open mic, we didn't understand the impact that literally having a space to do things and having a place that people literally made you feel like you can do whatever you want to do had on our lives. Literally, I've gone on to start my own nonprofit, and Chance the Rapper's doing great things, and we're all doing amazing things because of spaces like U Media. And I think Obama Presidential Center will be a space like that for our city, and will be the opportunity for other people in the younger generation, because obviously we always want to focus on the future. Not only will the kids be okay because of the environmental impacts that are positive and the ecological impacts that are positive for Jackson Park, flooding will be something that's not an issue, that's currently an issue, especially with Lakeshore Drive. So just considering the ecological impacts moving forward for the environment, but also remembering that this will be a space for kids to create ideas and work together. And there will be more people like me and like Evie, like Tati, that space.
Thank you for your comment. All registered speakers who are present have now participated. Next slide. Thank you for your participation and input in this public hearing webinar. As a reminder, the environmental assessment is available for public viewing and comment on the NPS Pepsi website through October 30th. Public hearing materials, including the public hearing presentation, are posted on the city's website. Next slide. This concludes the public hearing webinar. Again, thank you for your time and participation.
Jennifer or Kamal, this is Donna, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, Donna.
There was one speaker, her first name was very long. She was about the second or third one. She just dropped out completely. And I turned on my microphone and then I kind of heard her coming back in, but there was a big gap there.
Okay, Donna, we can work with you offline.
Okay. All right. And then also, what about sending me the names of the speakers?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.